but I've just chose a few of them that I think are interesting, and I think that audiences out there should know. Okay, so the first one comes from a theological approach. So this is and this is the divine command theory. Alright, so what we're going to talk about is the divine command theory. And the question is, well, what is the divine command theory? What is the law? What actions does the law prescribe? How do we make assessments of morality or immorality with respect to the law? Okay, so the divine command theory is a theological theory that God has created the laws of morality, right? So it's a theological theory that states God has created the laws of morality. God, and we'll just put creates the laws of... Okay, so basically all the divine command theory is saying is that God creates the laws of morality. Simple enough. And the question is, how do we make sense of that, right? Well, there's an interesting account that Plato actually raises with respect to this idea of the divine command theory, though he doesn't say it explicitly. And it's as follows. If it's the case that God creates the laws of morality, then we have to recognize that in determining whether or not an action is right or wrong, well, an action is right because God commanded it. So we label this as this, right? An action is right. If you want to know whether or not an action is right or wrong with respect to the divine command theory, then all you have to do is to see, did God command the action? If God commanded the action, then if he commanded it, then it's right, right? So an action is right if God commanded it, right? So it is right if God commanded it. So we start to have an understanding of that, right? Now, if we're saying that an action is right because God commanded it, right? If we're saying that an action is right because God commanded it, we're going to talk about some of the benefits, the problems, and try and make an assessment of it, right? So this action is right. Why is it right? Because God commanded it, so that it's being right, right? It's being right is contingent on God having said, this is what you need to do. The problem, however, there are problems. The first thing, and there's benefits too, so I'll talk about both. The first problem is the argument that it's arbitrary, right? Somebody might say that this is arbitrary. And that is, God could command contradictory things, right? God could command contradictory things. So if an action is right because God commanded it, then God could tell you to do X. God could tell you to do not X. The person who does X is right. The person who does not X is also right. So the first problem with the divine command theory, arguably, is that God could command contradictory things. He could tell you to do one action, he could tell you to do another action. Both actions are right. An example might be, let me see if I can think of an example, where, and I'm not a biblical scholar in any sense, but God might have the command, this is just argument for the sake of sort of understanding this theory, right? God might make the command that thou shalt not kill, right? So if you do not kill, then your action is right because God commanded it. Thou shalt not kill, you do not kill, therefore your action is right. However, God might tell Abraham specifically to kill his son, right? He might say, Abraham, I want you to kill Isaac. And I think that's how it goes. You have to forgive me if I've selected the wrong names. So Abraham walks up to the top of the mountain. He takes out his knife. He goes to kill his son. Were he to have killed his son, I mean, like he's intervened and stopped from doing it, but were he to have actually killed his son, his action would have been right. So the problem is, people argue, that God can command contradictory stances. You cannot kill, you can kill, both actions are right. Okay, so that's a problem. Another problem with this is that you cannot use reason to determine proper action. Right? Another problem, so this is the first problem, and this is the second problem. The first problem is that it's arbitrary, and I gave you the example. God could command contradictory things. The second thing is that you cannot use your reason to determine proper action. The reason is, well, why? Well, if it's arbitrary, if God could command some to say killing is bad, yet, and that action is right. So if you don't kill, then you're doing the right thing. God can also command people, specific people, to say that you can kill. Well, you can't use your reason to determine what God is going to be able to command. You have to wait for the command, and then you base your determination on whether your action is right or wrong on whether or not you followed His command. So you can't use your mind to figure out before the fact whether or not your action is going to be right or wrong. So that's a huge problem, argue some, for the divine command theory. However, there are benefits, right, to the divine command theory, right? And what are some of the benefits? Well, the obvious benefit is that your action will always be right if God commanded it, right? So you can know with certainty that an action is right or moral if God commanded it. Okay, so with respect to divine command theory, God creates the laws of morality. God makes determinations on what actions are right or not, and we know that an action is right because God commanded it. So if God commands it, then we know that it's right. If God commands it, then we know it's right. The problem with divine command theory is that some people say that it's arbitrary. And why is it arbitrary? Because God could command contradictory things. He could tell you that not killing is permissible. Killing is not permissible in one hand, but killing for certain people is permissible. That contradiction is too much for us to sort of wrap our mind around, because we don't know what God's going to make a determination on. So we can't use our reason. However, the benefit to the divine command theory is that you know with certainty that your action is going to be right if, in fact, God commanded it. Okay.